So in this video today, we're going to take a look at Netlify's new functionality called their durable caching layer. The durable cache is a system primitive on their CDN, which is going to allow for you outside of any framework, agnostic of all the different frameworks out there, to use some really cool caching functionality to make your sites and your APIs super performant on their CDN without relying on the functionality of other frameworks to make that happen. So let's take a look at what this is all about. All right, so here's what we're working on today. We have a Netlify project. This is currently live on a published URL versus working locally. The local cache works a little bit differently. And we've got 3 endpoints. One is going to be a demo that uses the Netlify durable caching. One is one that's going to hit the endpoint and not cache at all. And then one is how we're actually going to purge the cache. So if we look here, we have an API/no cache with a username. So if we click on this, we're going to go to the Brob endpoint to get my specific articles from dev.to. And you can see that it's taking about 3 seconds. And if I reload this, it's going to take about that long again, which is a long time, 2.25 at this point. I reload again, a couple seconds. And what's happening is I'm actually artificially inflating this so that we can kind of prove the point. So this is the no cache version. Now we've got one that is also using the durable caching functionality inside of Netlify as well. So this one is at the regular demo URL. You can see we're going to brob, and it's still taking 2.5 seconds. But now when I reload the page again, it's taking 34 milliseconds, 49 milliseconds, 37 milliseconds. So it's hitting that cache and responding much, much faster than it would if it had to make this this request every single time to my unreliable API, which is delaying for a couple seconds. And then of course, if I want to, I also, let's prove again this is working. So we can come here, non-durable cache, no good. Durable cache, super fast. And then I can purge the cache by passing it this articles-brob, which is a tag that I've set up. And I go back to the dev.to article, and it takes a long time, but then every subsequent load, super, super fast. So what's happening here? So first and foremost, we do have our client, and it's going to make a request to our route, right? API demo brob. That's going to then send it over to our CDN. And the CDN is going to check to see first, in its normal kind of path, does this exist in my local cache? Ooh, does not want to do that. If it's a miss, then it's going to, let's get some arrows here. So first we're going to have an arrow. Goes from the client up to the CDN. CDN is going to check over at the cache. And if it's a miss, then it's going to fire the function. So we can have the function up here. Here's our function. Our function will then send a request over to the API, in this case, the dev.to API. And then from there, it can return all the data. Oops, not that one. So we request here, it sends back to the CDN, or to the CDN. CDN is going to send it to the client, and it's also going to send it over to the cache so that in the future, when we come to this cache. Now this is fine until you think about the fact that this isn't just a big amorphous CDN. This is actually a CDN node in a specific region. So what actually is happening here is we have multiple nodes. So a new client might send that request, and it might just so happen to come over to this CDN node. This CDN node has no way of figuring out how it can get from this cache. So it's going to automatically come to the function. Function's going to fire, and then we're going to get another CDN cache over here that is going to respond with everything. So we get this, it then comes all the way down, right? All that's happening. So each of these, every time it hits a new node, it's going to be that 2-second problem. It's going to hit that node, it's going to have to run the function, and that's going to be problematic for what we've got going on. So what the durable directive is going to do for us is find a new way. So let's grab a few of these pieces. In fact, let's grab everything. There's our new diagram. All right. So we're going to get rid of all of our arrows. So now what we have is we still have this idea of the client going to the CDN node, right? And then the CDN node will request from the function. But before it does that, it's going to try to hit another cache. We're going to insert here our new durable cache. And it's going to check here first. If it hits, it will immediately return. And if it doesn't, it's going to go to the function, fire the function, and the function will send that down. And then we'll also, of course, get this cache populated, and this cache is then able to send as well. Oops. So we're all good there, right? And now what's going to happen is instead of when the new client makes its request up to the new node can actually check the durable cache and immediately respond back with what's in the durable cache. It's stored from that function call before, and then it can bring its own local cache as well. And we get all the things that we were getting before very, very quickly. So now the second or third node hits this durable cache. The durable cache responds immediately with that cache data, which can then be sent down and also stored locally at the CDN node layer. So instead of every region having to store its own, which also has ACID issues, right? It has issues of internal consistency across the CDN. We now have this little database layer that we're not controlling. We're just storing some information there in the cache, and that's what's going to be responded to on all of this. So again, each of these CDN nodes gets that kind of 40, 50 millisecond response time instead of the 2.5 second response time that the function is taking for us. All right, so let's take a look at the no cache, which is kind of our default here. Let's get things a little bit cleaned up here. There we go. So what this is doing is that we have a function to get the articles. We are artificially slowing the API by 2,000 milliseconds, by two full seconds. We're making a request to an API that I've got set up elsewhere, and then we're returning that data as JSON. And then down here, what we're doing is just calling that function, right? We're getting the username from the context variable coming in from the Netlify URLs. And then we are getting the articles and returning the articles in the username as the response. You can see down here, we do have a little bit, this is actually a cool little efficiency. You can set up your paths for your API endpoints directly inside of your function, which is a really nice feature. And then if we take a look at the one that has the caching, much the same for our get articles, that still exists, but we have this cache headers method here from the CDN cache control package that you can install from Netlify. This is just going to be, npm install CDN cache control, and it gives you a whole bunch of new functionality that we can play with. So if we look down here, we're getting the articles the same as always, but then what we're going to do is we're going to set some new headers. And this setting of the headers here is going to do a few things. When you don't put anything in the method call here, it's going to set things to be durable. It's going to set a year cache on the CDN, and it's going to set it to be durable, which is going to allow for that kind of in the middle section to respond, as opposed to having to make the local CDN or other areas return the response. And then we pass those headers in, and that's it. Now, we do have this chained method on it, which is the tagging method, and that's what's going to create our ability to purge these caches. So since I'm setting two different tags, one is just articles and one is the articles for the username being passed, I can actually clear that specific cache, either the full articles list, which every set of usernames is going to have, or I can just clear the articles-username. And that's what allows me to set up my purge cache method. And here you can see I'm grabbing the tag from my URL, which is API purge cache with that tag splat at the end. If no tag, just return back out. Error handling would be good there. And then otherwise, we're going to use the purge cache method that comes from the Netlify functions package. So npm install Netlify functions. I should bring this up here, but that's where my types are, one way or the other. And then all I have to do is call that and pass it an array of tags. In this case, I'm just passing it whatever tag I'm getting, but I could maybe do it comma separated in my URL parameters and then break that down and send it as individual items in this. And it's going to clear that specific tag, return back that it's been purged with the 202 status, and then it's going to make it so that the CDN requires a refresh when it hits, right? So instead of getting the local CDN cache, it's going to go to the durable cache layer. The durable cache layer is now going to know that this specific cache is invalidated, and it's going to need to be brought in fresh. So again, that intermediate layer is what's going to allow all the different CDN nodes to pull from the same cache and to have them all invalidated at the same time, which is, again, a nice little efficiency for what this is doing. So yeah, that's the very short form of what kind of the durable cache is. A little bit of explanation with that diagram, a little bit of code view. Now that CDN cache layer that I was talking about, the package for the headers, there's a whole bunch of options you can pass in, both as properties in that method, but also chainable method calls on there. So you can add additional things onto those cache headers. And all it's doing really is it's generating those cache headers for you, both for the Netlify CDN and for the browser. It's doing all of that in one fell swoop for you and sending it on down to both the CDN and the browser. And you just toss that as headers in your code. So there's a lot of additional functionality you can build in. You can get very, very granular with this. You can even use things like e-tags and that sort of thing to extend this functionality even further. So I encourage you to play around with it, take this simple case, expand from it, and see what you can do when you're freed from having to just use the frameworks and you can use these primitives on your CDN directly. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.